But no, I wanted to, well, before addressing that question, whether this is a milestone or not, just address some of the issues that Nima brought up. So he explained why supersymmetry is attractive. Those reasons haven't gone away, not only because they continue to be outstanding features of what we don't understand about the universe, how unification takes place, what is the origin of dark matter, and potentially explaining electroweak hierarchy, and a few other reasons as well. But because people haven't come up with alternatives yet. I mean, there might be, there better be, if supersymmetry doesn't work, other explanations, but it's not as if people haven't been thinking of them for the last 40 years. What the discussion has, and to some extent continues to be, is over something called naturalness, which Nima didn't explain, or Gerard, who was one of the inventors of the strategy. I regard naturalness not as a law of physics, a principle of naturalness, a concept of naturalness, but simply a strategy. It's a strategy which we teach undergraduates. If you want to understand a physical situation, take the relevant scales, physical scales involved in the problem of dimensionless constants that come into our framework, theoretical framework for understanding the physical phenomena, and you can easily, or if you don't, we'll teach you how to come up with a back-of-the-envelope estimate as to the order of magnitude of the relevant physical quantity we're discussing. So that, to some extent, that's what naturalness is. There's more that goes into it. It relies on decoupling of scales, on locality in a way, sort of basic concepts of the way we look at the universe. But it's a strategy. The dimensionless numbers you come up with this input should be of order 1. And if you have to adjust them to 1 part in 100, well, that smells a bit. Who ordered that? Why is it not of order 1? If you have to adjust it to 1 part in a million, that's really suspicious. If you have to adjust it to 1 part in 10 to the 20, that's truly suspicious. You obviously have failed miserably by a back-of-the-envelope calculation. Something else is needed, some other principle, some other small number that comes from some dynamical effect. So it's a good strategy. It's a strategy we use all the time in physics. It's been a little dressed up, in my opinion, to become a principle, so that when Nima would get up and talk about split supersymmetry, which he just told me involves adjusting parameters to maybe 1 part in 100 or 1 part in 1,000, that is unallowed. Now, of course, if we look at the real world that we measure and observe, and we fit it by the standard theory, which works with exquisite precision, there are many small parameters in that model, which we've measured with exquisite precision, and we have absolutely no understanding of them. And they're much smaller than 1/100th or 1,000th, using masses, not mass squared. So the mass of the top quark divided by the mass of the bottom quark is roughly 53,000. Very unnatural number. The natural standard model would have all the quark masses the same, all the lepton masses the same, all the couplings the same, or at least at some energy, which they actually do. The couplings differ by factors. Well, it's a running difference, but at the energies at which they were first measured, or typical scales of the strong and weak interactions, they differ by factors of 10 to 100. Doesn't bother us, partly because we understand how they unify even better with supersymmetry, but even without it at the Planck scale, and no big deal. We understand the dynamics that produces that small number, and it's not so small. Now, there are a few of these, many of these small numbers, truly small numbers, that dictate the form of the universe as we know it. And Nima referred to some of them, the cosmological constant and the electroweak hierarchy. The third is actually the one that Dirac first pointed attention to, which is why is gravity so weak? Or why is the mass of the proton 10 to the minus 20 times smaller than the Planck mass? This bothered Dirac, and he couldn't explain it. We now have calculated that, or QCD has calculated that. We understand that masses vary linearly with energy and couplings logarithmically, and the log of 10 to the 20 is a number we can understand and indeed calculate. So small numbers, even of the order of 10 to the 20, are calculable if you understand the dynamics. In the case of the hierarchy, supersymmetry offered the opportunity to explain the same quantity, same kind of big number in terms of by turning it into logarithmic effects, and still remains the best hope for doing that. There might be others, indeed. The cosmological constant, which is a totally different kind of issue, is similar scale when you convert it to masses, and we have absolutely no idea for that. Those are serious conceptual problems, and their resolution, for example, in the case of the proton, or compared to the Planck mass, or why is gravity weak, why don't we form immediately black holes, that we can explain. That required truly new understanding of quantum field theory, which wasn't available to Dirac when he posed the problem in the 1930s. We have no similar explanation of the cosmological constant. So to relate such different kinds of lessons to be drawn from the existence of very small numbers, which in some cases we've learned how to explain, in other cases we have absolutely no idea, to each other seems to me wrong. Each is its own sign that we're missing something fundamental. The reason I still believe in supersymmetry largely is because that's the only dynamical explanation we've come up with for one such large number. But those are numbers of order 10 to the 20. When you get down numbers of order 10 to the 2 or 3, it doesn't bother me. I mean, in the history of the Standard Model, nobody, if somebody was told back in 1960, there's going to be a third generation of leptons and of quark and of whatever you want to call them, strangeness, you know, top, bottom, and those quark masses are going to be 50,000 times heavier than the quarks that make up the proton. People would have said, that's absurd, that's crazy, that's totally unnatural. We measure them, we have no theory of them, we accept those numbers. They are also exactly like the unknowns in the supersymmetric extension of the Standard Model, buried in the couplings to the Higgs, which we have no understanding for in any fundamental way. So I regard, you know, supersymmetry doesn't show up at the LHC or only very tentatively. That's just a sign that there probably are small numbers involved, just like there were in the quark and lepton mass spectrum. So what? On the other hand, in the absence of any positive experimental evidence for supersymmetry, we should indeed, I mean, it's always good. This is a good time to scare the hell out of all the young people in the audience and tell them, don't follow your elders, you know, these are great ideas. You know, there's some indication that they might not be sufficient. Go out, look for something new and crazy and powerful and different especially. That's definitely a good lesson, but I'm too old for that.